Check, check. Check one, check two.
Welcome to the We Are One podcast. Today I have an amazing guest, Cynthia Sue Larson. Multiple books written on the Mandela Effect, the quantum realm, and physics. So very happy to have you with me. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Ken. Love to be talking about these topics with you. And
we have a lot in common. And I woke up about four to 5 years ago with some different things. For me, it was I woke up with illness, and the first thing I learned about was the placebo effect and things like that. So we want to get into those for sure. But if you want, tell us about yourself a little bit and what you're looking at currently.
Yeah, well, my background is I studied physics at UC Berkeley, but before that, I actually have been a lifelong mystic. It's good to get that out there in front, because otherwise people might make assumptions if you're just a regular physicist, and I'm not a regular physicist. I'm much more. I was born aware. Is this a term for this thing, where you remember your consciousness before you were born? And so I definitely remembered that. I remember just hanging out in a blissful state of being. And then I went through a Kundalini experience that kind of woke me up in 1994. And that was huge for me, because that was like reality shattered, basically. And it was a re-experiencing of being a child again, where I'd been seeing a lot of mind-matter interaction as a young girl. And then it's opened wide up, right all over again to an undeniable degree. And it took me a while to integrate all of that experience. It happened in 1994. So 5 years later, then I had my website, realityshifters.com up, and because it took like 5 years to integrate that Kundalini experience. And then I've been bringing it all together ever since: the physics, the spirituality, and this Mandela Effect, sometimes called reality shifts, sometimes by Mary Rose Barrington called just one of those things. So it's had different names, but it's been around for a long, long time. And I just love finding out what's going on now with it, what's current, what's new. And I think we should give credit to Christopher Anatra, the quantum businessman, because that's how you and I connected. And he's a big part of the International Mandela Effect Conference.
Yeah, I've watched the numerous videos of you guys, and I think that's great. I think I wish I was a part of this earlier, but here I am now. So, I'm here now. Can you tell us? I heard your interview that you did recently. I think it was recently, and you talked about the Art Bell experience. And actually, you were one of the people who he coined that term, I believe. Correct? The Mandela Effect.
He asked me if I would call it the Mandela Effect, and he was specifically asking about Nelson Mandela, which is the effect is named after him. And in my book, Reality Shifts, that had been out briefly before I was talking with Art Bell, I was actually not talking about Nelson Mandela. I was talking about a cat that was alive again, and then the actor Larry Hagman that was alive again. So this is the first reports in writing, but I was calling it basically alive again, a form of reality shift. So those are the terms that seemed more specific and more suitable to me, because reality shifts is a big umbrella. And then within that umbrella, the alive again phenomenon is just one part of this wide, wonderful world of what we have come to call the Mandela Effect. But yes, Art Bell, I think he deserves a lot of credit, because he was on, coast to coast. He was talking to people at that time, getting faxes, which is funny. Like, who does that now? We do texting, but faxes were the texting of the day back in the 1990s. And he just was flooded with people remembering that Nelson Mandela had died while he was on Robben's Island. And it was kind of blowing Art Bell's mind. So he was a big proponent of time travel theory, that maybe there are time travelers. And he talked to some of time travelers on his show on Coast to Coast. And so that's the kind of stuff I was talking with Art about. And I remember saying, no, I would not call it the Mandela Effect, but I know it was starting to grab traction, and you never know which term is going to get traction and grab hold. That's the one that grabbed everyone's attention.
For sure. Were there any that he came across to you, or that you heard him mention, or that were out there? You mentioned one that wasn't Mandela Effect, Nelson Mandela. I'm sorry, who's the actor again that died and came back?
Oh, Larry Hagman. I like the Mandela Effect better than the Hagman Effect. No
I
offense
think
to
that's
Larry Hagman.
a little catch here. I've never heard of Larry Hagman. Sorry, Larry, if you're still around. Well, if you're
No,
around
he's
again,
passed on. No,
well, maybe
he
he'll come
came
back.
back. Well, that's true.
Maybe he'll come
Yeah,
back.
that would be nice.
Were
Got
there any
nothing
other
against
ones
it.
that you knew about back then? Because it's hard for people to understand. Like in the age before the internet, in the 90s, the internet was still coming about, and chat room forums and AOL
Yes.
online, things like that. But like, were there any that were talked about and
Oh,
discussed
yeah.
and researched before then?
Yes, I've been doing some surveys on a Yahoo group that's now gone away, and we've got other groups where we discuss things. But in that group, people like B. Arthur came up, Captain Kangaroo. I can't remember the actor's name. He was on a TV. He was a TV star for a children's show back in the 1960s and 70s. And Jane Goodall. That's one that I think she's still alive. So that one's a big one. People still remember that she passed away. And I do too. So there are a lot of big names that were coming up before Nelson Mandela, before that became the Mandela Effect. So I'd already been sort of looking into it before 2010 because I'd been running the Reality Shifters website since 1998, 99. Wow. It's been a long time. So it had been a very well-known phenomenon for at least a decade before the term caught hold. And I'd been, like I said, publishing a book about it, writing about it, doing surveys about it. And Nelson Mandela was just one of many.
So what came first for you? Was it simulation theory, or was it the fact that there could be people walking around that are soulless and NPCs or minions? Because I think they kind of go together. Once you start realizing that certain people are coming back that weren't here before, your gears start turning, and you go, okay, hold on a second here. How could that person have a soul, be conscious, and have exited this matrix or this simulation? Like there's things that fit together. So for you, I'm assuming you're a simulation theorist, correct?
Well, there's a lot that I love about it, and I would give credit to the dream that we're all in a waking dream, that we're lucid living. But it's pretty much the same thing. If you're looking at this as a dream, and you're calling it a simulation, well, to me, that's apples and oranges. It's like
primary reality.
It's a primary reality,
yep,
and it means that there's Maya, there's illusion, that everything we're looking at is a little bit of a simulation because we're not actually sensing what we think we can see, touch, taste, hear, smell. Those senses that we consider so vital and so important are basically being mapped from, information, if you will, that's out there, and then we interpret it, and it comes inside of us. And speaking of inside, I was inside the Mandela Effect myself. There was a point where I know for sure I almost died, and it was so real that I told my parents about it, my sister, my kids, my husband, and then I didn't really tell anybody else, but I didn't need to because I'm involved in this community. Inevitably, someone I'd never heard from before wrote to me out of the blue and said, "You don't know me, but this is going to sound weird, and I apologize, but yeah, I saw you died, and I'm so glad you're back." And so then I didn't tell him anything about the details. I just asked, "Really, I'd love to hear more. I'm not offended. In fact, this is great. Yeah. Tell me what you remember. Like, when was it?" Because he was contacting me, I think in 2018, 2019, and he remembered I died in 2016, 17 or something like that. So it had been a couple of years earlier. And he remembered the same specifics of what I'd actually gone through. He remembered after there'd been a post on social media after an illness. Cynthia, unfortunately, has passed away. And so that was posted by, I think, my husband. Other people then, I put that out there on my newsletter, the Reality Shifters monthly newsletter. And I started hearing from a lot of people. About a dozen people came forward and said, one of them said that they remembered seeing a tribute done by Moneybag 73 because he and I had been on a show together on YouTube. Someone else remembered Rupert Sheldrake said something about me. That's amazing. And then just others just remembering that I'd passed away, but they were all glad that I was back. So it wasn't a huge number of people, not millions or thousands or anything like that.
Right.
But it was enough, and it dovetailed with the case of pneumonia that I had, where I felt like this could kill me back in like 2016.
Was that the story? That was the storyline of how you actually you passed away the first time?
I didn't well, in my experience, of course, I'm not going to remember that I passed away.
Sure.
but the interesting thing is I'm keenly aware, because I love this sort of a simulated multiverse concept, that we are in a quantum or holographic multiverse, whichever way you want to look at it. Basically, something is amazing about the possibility that we are primarily consciousness. And if this is a game, now we could look at it like there are non-player characters, NPCs, but you can also look at it as role play, RPGs, the role player game, where you get to have input about what kind of game you're experiencing.
Yes.
That seems like it fits more for what I went through. And it seems like it fits more if you like that game concept of the simulation, which is fine.
I'm with you. I really think that there's a lot of different ways we can go down. There's a lot of rabbit holes you can dive into. I'm not interested in entertaining the negative one. I like to, keep it positive. And if the things that I've seen and things that I've experienced are true, and that's all that there is true with your emotion and experiences, then if I have an option, I'm going to keep it positive. I'm going to keep it on what I can manifest, when I can, what I could shift, what I could remember, those emotions that are tied to those memories. I'm going to keep it that way. I don't want to go down the other direction. I fully realize that it could happen to people. But when you had your Kundalini experience, I believe I had something similar to that. And when you feel that gamma flood, and you feel that it's 100% love, you don't believe in evil. At least I don't. I believe in negative intentions, negative actions. I believe in immoral things. But when you feel that, there's no room. If you're 100% love, how can there be any evil? And that's kind of the way I feel about the way this thing is transpiring in my life. Is that if I want to experience something, I need to, consciously manifest those intentions to feel that.
I love it. Yeah, I would agree with you there. I know some people that go through a Kundalini awakening can be a little traumatized. It's not always exactly a perfectly easy experience. Let's put it that way. It can be so intense to be excruciating for some people.
Can you describe that a little bit, how it happened for you, so we can kind of see if it's the similar experience?
Sure. In 1994, the spring equinox, it was when that's not when the Kundalini started, but I know that's when I started aching for it. I think I called it into being. It came like 6 months later at the fall equinox. But for me, I felt like I'd overslept. And I was telling my cousin, like, I just feel like I'm not awake. I keep trying to wake up and I'm not awake. I need to wake up, but I just can't somehow. I feel like I'm here. I just don't feel like I'm all here. There's something missing. And she understood that it was a spiritual thing. She interpreted, that's why I was talking to her. And she said, yeah, that makes sense. And so I didn't think much about it until later that year. My first husband at that time, he went to a conference. And when he came back, he had this huge epiphany. Like, he'd just been looking at the ceiling basically, but the way the light was arranged and the way he got these insights were incredible. And that, I think, was the moment that I'd been waiting for. It's kind of like there was something, there's like this trigger moment, like, oh, good, that's happening. Mm-hmm. Like all the world's a stage kind of thing, like enter stage left. Your husband's had this amazing epiphany. And that's, for me, then everything took off. Meaning, I don't even know where to start. It was just like a flood of energy. I felt like I was running enough electricity through my body to light up a small city. And
how long did that last?
The intense part, it was super intense for a couple of weeks, and I didn't feel like myself. I felt like, I just felt like I was being flooded with energy. My senses were super heightened, so I could close my eyes and still see, and like 360-degree vision. I was spontaneously astral traveling. I was spontaneously knowing what people were doing and saying who were nowhere near me, that I don't even think much about, kind of randomly. I just suddenly, and I knew it was real. Like I was seeing true things happening real time. And at night, when I try to sleep, I'd be woken up every hour. So I'd see my digital clock at 1:11, 2:22, 3:33, 4:44, 5:55 every single night. Like, I didn't miss a single one. That was the ordinary part of it. There were so many much weirder things happening, like meeting spirit guides and seeing their physical effects in this reality. So it was just mind-boggling, just totally mind-boggling.
And it lasted quite a long time, huh?
Well, a couple of weeks of that super intensity, and then it kind of, I felt like there was a little bit of a struggle because my egoic mind was still like, what is happening? And kind of trying to grip onto the residual aspects of my previous view of reality. But that just broke away. I just sort of gave up, like, okay, uncle, I realized that this is the way I saw reality when I was quite young, but it's so hard to function this way once you're an adult. I was in my 30s. I'm a mom. I have 2 daughters. I'm married. It was just like, this is too much. How can one function like this? But I realized I'll just have to reshape. I'll have to recreate who I am to, be able to pull this all together. So
yeah, I'm a firm believer that that as conscious creators, what we see, we believe, or we believe it to see it. Whether certain things that you now were aware of, it seems like your awareness was wide open. Was there certain things that you now believed was possible that you didn't before, and now you started seeing certain things a certain way?
yeah, it was kind of reconnecting me to that born aware child that I once was, with that magical thinking that kind of got beaten out of me at, getting my degree in physics at UC Berkeley. And then I got an MBA degree, and then I worked in the corporate world. So all of those experiences kind of have the net effect of not completely destroying the intuitive side of and spiritual side of who I am, but kind of pushing it down, repressing it. And now I'm basically running my life by it. Now it's been inverted. What had been kind of swept under the rug, let's not speak of these things. In the business world, I can use intuition and knowingness, but we can't really talk about it. And then to have it completely flipped, so that now I do know that conscious agency is everything. And you don't have to be an incarnate conscious agent to have a big effect on the world. In other words, angels and that kind of thing are quite real to me. So that's that mystical side of myself I was mentioning earlier. And then when I look at physics, I see that there's a lot of corroboration there, also with indigenous wisdom. So I see within indigenous wisdom and quantum physics tremendous insights that match.
Overlap.
Yeah, they do. And there's this remarkable depth of awareness that's possible, where we can, like you said, recognize that we are spiritual beings. And there's nothing to be afraid of when you know that. And when you know that you actually can access that level of conscious agency that each of us has access to, then we're not victims, and we can change the way that we observe things. And in so changing that observation, we literally can change the world.
I like it. Great. So you mentioned that your first memory, or your first intuition before you incarnated here. I'm assuming you believe that we do reincarnate, or we have some kind of quantum immortality. What do you think happens when we die? Do we go back to the void, or to the peaceful place that we came from, or do we go to another level?
Oh yeah. Well, it's like different things happen. I've seen what I see is, for myself, I seem to keep doing what I do when I'm alive. So I'm still moving and I'm growing a little bit. I think I do grow more when I'm alive. I say I almost said unfortunately. I love being between lives. It is bliss. It's like being in the spa, hanging out with angels and perfect love, and everything feels wonderful. The only downside when attempting to help people and help others understand who they are, it's just hard to be heard. It's hard to have much of an impact. So being alive, it's easier to make a connection. So there's a difference there. Some people, when they die, they don't seem to be doing that much. They seem like they're kind of they're stagnant. I wouldn't call them non-player characters even then, but they seem not as motivated to keep moving. Maybe that takes time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a level of awareness. I mean, when I first started to have some of this intuition of how can you have a simulation and everyone is playing on the same field? How can you manipulate people? How can I see the level of corruption and manipulation, and people just don't see X plus Y equals Z? I started like, there's no way there's anybody in there. Like I kept saying, there's nobody in there. There's nobody in there. And then so slowly I'm starting to say, well, maybe I should not consider that. Maybe they just have a smaller bandwidth.
Yes.
And that's quite possible. I'm not sure how we're engineered genetically. So, I still follow history. We'll get into that a little bit too, about some of my beliefs, and see they line up with yours. But it's really hard to. So I coined a new term. I call the Lords of Minions is like the cabal and the people running these the elite programs, and the minions are the people like the little minions on the minions from the cartoons, and they're just running around and they don't really know what's going on and they just do whatever they're told. So I think I kind of prefer that than non-player characters or soulless beings, because I don't really know. I'm quite sure I was never one of those people who just did what they were instructed to do. Jump off a cliff, no problem. I'll go jump. Or if you've seen some of those situations where they have people in waiting rooms and there's a buzzer and they just stand up and they're like, why are we standing up? I don't know. Why are you standing up? Oh, because everybody stands up. And I'm like, there's no way I would ever do that. But,
that is a great video for anybody who hasn't seen it. You got to see it. Yeah.
I posted one, but I think it's actually probably I don't think it's the original one that I saw originally. So it looked like it was more staged. But right. I just have a hard time believing that I would have ever been in that situation and done that. So, I guess we'll never know now. But now that I'm fully aware of what's going on, and, there are people trying to manipulate other people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet you have a clue based on whatever you've done the last few years. So I think you do know, like a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. All right, so we're still on question number 1.
Okay.
We went all the way, but we're gonna cycle back through them, and I have them on the right side. So if you click on your private chat, you can kind of see what's coming. But okay, so what do you think are the origins of this? I mean, have you put together a theory of what the Mandela effect is? When somebody says, "What is it?" without explaining it, how can you say how it's physically? And when I say physically, I mean physics. How can that physically happen?
Well, considering we still don't have an agreed upon quantum interpretation
of reality.
We don't have one that everyone agrees on. We don't. So we just don't. So to expect okay, now explain something paranormal, metaphysical, right. Well, what do you expect? So it's, we're sort of in the same boat basically. And it's not, therefore we don't need to kick ourselves or be upset that we don't have this perfect answer mechanism worked out. Part of the reason I would say that a mechanism is kind of inadequate anyway is because it's too lower dimensional. We're going to need a new mathematics to handle the true physics that can bring together, Einsteinian, Newtonian physics with, relativity basically, with the quantum physics that has things like entanglement and so forth. To bring those two together means we have to have quantum gravity. And to explain quantum gravity,
we can't even explain.
We're going to need new mathematics. We're going to need something like that amplituhedron that we've been hearing about, and the mathematics that come from there. Then,
you think
pretty much
going to have it though, because I don't see that we can't, like you said, we can't even agree upon what the double slit experiment is, or we can't agree upon the observer effect. We can't even agree if this reality is objective or subjective. So for us to say, how quantum gravity works, first of all, I don't believe in gravity the way that they tell us that it is. And I don't know what shape the earth is, because we have a problem with that too. People who are changing the goalposts and things like that. So observationally, I have an issue with it ever being subjective or objective. And I guess we can start there as far as what we're doing here. But you're right. And so we can define these theorems or these theories of relativity, which are just building blocks on another with this unsubstantiated, to say that that's the best theory that we have is not saying that it's correct.
So when I define Mandela effect, I do not dive into what might be creating it or so-called causing it, because it looks like that's still open to conjecture. There are several top theories in that area, including
go.
Yeah. Well, there's that
top theories. I haven't heard any top theories that make any sense to me.
Oh, the simulated multiverse. There's a whole book about it by a game designer. He's the Rizwan Virk, last name Virk. He's an MIT graduate. That book is brilliant, and I didn't expect much of it when I looked into it. I thought, well, he's a game theorist. I saw he had a chapter on the Mandela Effect, so I thought, okay, I'll check it out. It's actually quite well written, and it's very good at taking someone who's not a programmer into the mindset that's required when you design games, which is what Rizwan Virk does. He's an entrepreneur, a game designer, meditator. And so I think it's a brilliant exposition of that whole theory. I think it's really well done. So I'll give him that. It's great. Then there are some other theories. That's not the only one, but that game theory kind of a concept, I've been touching on that a little bit so far. I would tend to call it a dream theory. That's where I come from, more the indigenous mindset. But, I think we're getting nitpicky if we start saying like, oh, it's a dream and no, it's a simulation. What's the difference?
It sounds like functions of religion. It's like, oh no, I believe that Jesus did this. However, he didn't do this. He was a prophet. No, he was the Messiah. Like, I mean, we are nitpicking on exactly what part it is. I like Chris's bubbles of reality. I think that's pretty open to interpretation.
And let's give credit to the physicist Eugene Wigner, who created the Wigner bubble concept of subjective bubbles of reality. Well, he's popularizing it. We get like, okay, this is like Fiona Broome. People say she coined the term the Mandela Effect, and she did. But she didn't really create the Mandela Effect, and she's certainly not the first one that wrote about it or thought about it. So Chris he's popularizing it. And this is a very important job. Carl Sagan did that with science. The popularizers are extremely important because if you don't have them, nobody knows what's going on. And we don't hear of, who's heard of Eugene Wigner? I mean, he's not a household name. Nobody knows about a Wigner bubble. Nobody's heard of it. So it's nice when we've got, books. There's a book about that. We had the author of the book about reality bubbles, truth bubbles on our show, Roger, I can't remember his name. Was it Marsh? Well, anyway, sorry. Anyway, he was on IMEC and we had him as a guest talking about those bubbles. And so, but to me, it came, I want to give credit to Eugene Wigner because he was the earliest one in quantum physics, really talking about the subjectivity effect that when you're in the sort of a Wigner bubble, and it has to do with the way an observer is looking at something like the double slit experiment. And if you have an observer of the observer, then what happens? And we started to see what happens with some experiments conducted and published. The results were published in 2019 from the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, in collaboration with scientists working at a university in Vienna, Austria. And what they did is they had 6 entangled photons moving through the double slit apparatus, and these 2 observational devices at the same place at the same time did have different observations. It's the Wigner bubble, or you can call it Chris's bubbles, or Roger Marsh's bubbles. But the bubble theory, whoever you want to credit it for, it's true. I mean, that's absolutely happening, proven to be true in 2019. So it's a thing. It's for sure. It's big. That should have been the news story of 2019. Right. It should have been Wigner bubbles are real.
And then the Nobel Prize is awarded for the
they're slow. Well, yeah.
Observer effect. But I mean, it's popularizing it, so people are starting to think about it. But
when I say slow, that was. But see that they're giving credit 50 years after that Bell's inequality research was conducted, partly here at UC Berkeley, close to where I live. And it took them 50 years to credit the Nobel Prize. So when people finally catch on to, oh, that was important, it can take decades. So but meanwhile, those of us who are trying to figure out why are we having the Mandela effect? It's happening to me. I want an answer. We're motivated.
Well, it comes down to perspective. I mean, I think everything in life is perspective. And to be honest, I think it's because we have free will and we're able to dive our perspectives down wherever direction we want. Yes. And I might see something this way and you might see it that way. And those bubbles may not connect for a while, but eventually our perspectives will tangle, or they will, intersect. So leads me to my last, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you said tangle, that's like a hairball of timelines. Now that's I've never heard, Chris, I'd never heard anyone else talk about that. So he's definitely
got a bunch of hairball theories, that's for sure.
Yeah, we love him. No, the hairball thing is really important because it shows like there's almost like a tug of war going on, and a whole bunch of tug of wars and some key historical events. But you wanted to talk about history too. So.
Well, yeah, honestly, and I guess where I was going with the free will and perspective is, I agree with. Last time Chris was on my show or on the channel, we talked about a benevolent creator and some of these Mandela effects, potentially shining light on exactly what was going on and who was in charge of them and things like that. Do you think that is a distinct possibility? Do you believe that the creator is benevolent, giving us free will to choose whatever we want, or do you have another perspective on that?
I really do. I had a dream just a couple days ago that was it was powerful dream. Have you ever had a dream and you wake up and think that meant something? I need to write it down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it started where I was on a ride, like in a Disneyland kind of a place, and everybody's on the same train together. We've all jumped on. The train starts, but then for some of us, it's like I can see that the train is just like moving. It's like it's split in two, but the people on one train, off they go, and we're on some sort of a thought controlled train, like a mind matter interaction train. And I'm looking at things like, that is beautiful. I love the way they did the Greek. And then the train just stops and then everybody can get off and like, really? And I can have a picnic right there by the river and go into the cute little cottages, make a cup of tea, have a biscuit, and then think, okay, get back on the train. Anyway, do that like lots of times, enjoying every beautiful moment in the landscape. And then at the end of the ride, it got to the point where I could even jump in and swim. I was swimming in a pool. I found there was a dime at the bottom. This is important. A dime to me, it may sound silly, but it represents God is here. It's such a small thing, but I feel when I see dimes, I'm like, oh, God is here. And so I found the dime, and I knew that in the dream, like, oh, God is here at the bottom of the pool. I have to get this dime. It shouldn't be at the bottom of the pool anyway. So I found it, picked it up, and swam out. I also saw a quarter. I don't know what that means, but I picked that up too. And then I jumped back on the train. And here's the surprise. Once everybody was back on the train, I guess we're all meditators or something. And then the trains, they fuse, and we're arriving at the station at the exact same time as everybody else that got on the train with us. And I know they were not having this thought-controlled experiment. That's not even the trippy part. The next day, I was walking back and forth on my front walk. It's bricks, and like on the fourth time I walked by, there was a dime there, exactly like the one I'd seen, and it had not been there. And I mean, I wasn't the only one walking back and forth. My daughter also did, and I asked her, "Did you drop a dime?" And she said no. So neither of us had dropped a dime. But it was it just gave me goosebumps. It was like the whole point of the dream is there's a benevolent God who's definitely here, and the way we think and what we're looking at, what we're paying attention to, directs everything. And for those of us who do that, we're having a totally different experience than those that don't. Yet we all come together. And then just to really drive home the whole point, I find a dime, a very beautiful, shiny dime, just like the one in my dream, like on my front walkway. Just, wow.
Just appeared. You manifested it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you swim to the bottom of the pool to pick up a dime. Have you had dreams where you could breathe underwater? I mean, have you ever, as you were swimming, I mean, I don't know if you were mentally focused on the fact that you were underwater or how long you were underwater swimming to get this dime, but I've had so many dreams where I'm underwater and I'm consciously able to breathe. And I don't know what that translates to, if that's some kind of past life that I could do that on another planet. I don't know what it means. But I don't know. Have you had those dreams as well, that you have either telekinetic or special powers?
Yeah, well, for sure. I did sort of have telekinetic powers. There was a lot of, in that dream, there was a lot. It was like Disneyland where they were, how they overdo everything. And there was like this strong current in the pool. It felt like I was swimming upstream, and the dime was all the way right where the jets were coming in. And like, good grief, there's a lot of pressure. So I was kind of doing some psychokinetic stuff to swim against that current. I didn't even worry about breathing. It's funny you mentioned that. So obviously I wasn't concerned about that.
We don't get concerned about it. Yeah.
No, and I fly in dreams too. So maybe all these things are related. That's very interesting. Great observation.
Sometimes you don't think about them when it's going on, but I usually do. I'm not always like I'm not always there to say I'm dreaming, but I'm always there to go, wait a minute, am I able to breathe in the water? Oh no, I'm good. Wait, take a small breath. See if you can do it. And then it's like, oh yeah, I did
we're
it before.
good.
I've done this before. Because I've done it in other dreams. And now I'm like, I've done it again. Oh, I told you I could do it. And I'm telling everybody, I told you I could do it. And I'm like, and I wake up and I'm like, how many times am I going to think that I could do that? But you know, and what is that signaling to me?
That's growth. I mean, this is like that mind matter interaction thing. I know that's what we're supposed to be learning in this go round on Earth right now. That's the big lesson as we face, whatever's going on. A lot of people talk about disasters, cataclysms coming, and so forth. Great, probably so. However, I know that that's the reason that we're having this great awakening, so that we can hone these kind of skills, like being in a dream and knowing you can breathe underwater, having flying dreams, having dreams that are real dreams, that like what you're learning and what you're seeing in the dream is real information sometimes.
They're teaching you something. Yeah.
Teaching you something, right. And you can get real confirmation the next day or maybe later that week or that month, but it's very, very connected. I've had so many experiences like that. And so I know that this is a leveling up. I think you mentioned that earlier. Are we leveling up? Yes. I'd say yes.
That,
yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna break this down to you, since I asked you if you had a theory. This has just come to me in the past like week or so. So seeing how the past is malleable, and we've seen proof of that with the Mandela effect, that things can change, or our perceptions can change, our memories of the past can change things. Do you think that history is some kind of an observer effect, or do you think that this has been documented well enough and translated enough that we can trust what we've been told about our history and how long it's gone through in the past? Forget about the reset thing that's probably happened, because that's a whole nother story too. But have you ever had any thoughts about how history has been directed to us, and how it can change some of our fears and things like that?
Wow, it's such a big subject. I mean, history, even if you just take not even involving the Mandela effect, it seems like it's a very controversial subject these days. With that, like the Netflix show, Ancient Apocalypse, and just the evidence that looks like, boy, there's human history that goes back tens of thousands of years. And, there's something big going on here. So there's that. But then to get to your question with the Mandela effect in mind, gosh, I mean, anything can change is what I'll tell you, anything. So even if we think like, oh, we learned that, we know that from reliable sources, maybe, but maybe not, So what one thing I've learned from the Mandela effect, from reality shifts, is to loosen my grip on feeling like I have to be right and that things have to be the way I think or I believe. Because it seems like that's not what we're learning with the Mandela effect and with reality shifts. Instead, it seems to be encouraging a loosening up of that tight grip that we've been tending to hold on to truth. Like there's only one truth and there's one objective reality. Clearly, that's not the case.
Right. Yeah, for me, I think that it is showing us that the only thing that is true or real is our emotions and the present and now. So we can look back on history, like, things that have happened and how that makes us feel. And now we're in this situation where the past has dictated the situations that we're in now. And the future is up for interpretation of how we act now. So to me, the Mandela effect is signaling that the simulation of the past. And at some point in time, I believe that we've been dropped into this. That's how I feel. Like, at some point in time, whether it's 1,000 years or 2,000 years ago, or maybe even just 200 years ago, we've been dropped in here. And no matter which way we look, we're going to see a history. We're going to see a rabbit hole, and we're going to find problems with it, which is what the Mandela effect is. And every time that it changes and we we're able to be signaled that we have seen those changes, then now the present has changed. And then that's what the Mandela effect is. The changes that we've noticed that have been changed from the past in the simulation and dropped in until now. So that's what I think the Mandela effect is to me, but it definitely signals to us that you should just roll with the punches, because, we haven't seen anything yet. There's going to be some different things that happen in our future. And I don't think that there's going to be a cataclysm. I just don't. I think if this is a simulation, it's just showing us something, but I don't think we're ever going to have to live in it. That's my opinion of anything like that. I felt that way during the pandemic. I said, this is not going to affect me. I refuse to let it affect me. And it came to me, and then it left. And all my family, it came to them and just left. And I was like, see, I told you. I think that we can have blinders on to somehow superpower, is that a word? Superpower like effect. What does Jason Bashir say that is our information field? And if my information field or aura is strong enough, nothing can affect it.
Yeah, that's good.
That's the way that I feel.
Yeah, we can be powerful creators. I would, my language for it has to do with levels of conscious agency, and that's very much Donald Hoffman talks about it too. But it's a big idea from physics as well, and it's all tied in with subjective reality and the fact that we do have free will, that we can choose at what level we're choosing to observe what's happening, and from that observational viewpoint, which is a kind of a meditative practice, to recognize that, for example, my thoughts and feelings, they're not really mine. It's not even me. I can just start recognizing, oh, these are thoughts and feelings, but I'm the observer of them.
Yep.
So it's a leveling. It's like stepping back. It's that I want to give credit to the philosopher, scientist who came up with that, and that's Leibniz. And he was the guy that also invented calculus along with at the same time as Sir Isaac Newton. So the two of them simultaneously came up with calculus. Calculus is about differentiation and integration. Two sides. It's like one, you're bringing things together, and the other, you're kind of bringing it apart, but they go together. And it works based on levels of it, like dimensional levels of consciousness, basically. And so Leibniz himself is credited with coming up with the pillars that science is built on. Things like a theory needs to be elegant, that's Leibniz. And so, but I want, my favorite thing that he ever came up with is this. It's these levels of conscious agency and awareness. Those aren't the terms he used, but I'm kind of bringing it more in line with the way that we talk about it in physics, and also with, consciousness researchers like Donald Hoffman.
Was that what your book was about? Quantum jumping was kind of attaching emotions to situations and kind of manifesting what you want to feel. Was that?
Yeah, in quantum jumps, I handle it sort of from the left brain approach for people. My first book, Reality Shifts, gets into this whole topic, but very right brain, very intuitive. And not everybody's that kind of an intuitive feeler. It doesn't click for everybody. So there are people that really want the science. And for them, then I bring in the placebo effect and the whole idea of you can think of it kind of like faking it till you make it, but it's not really faking it. It's more choosing.
It.
Yeah, it's like choosing. This is what I need to go there. This is who I am. This is what I'm creating. This is now what I will do. And everything just moves, and suddenly you're in that reality. Like deciding if you start coming down with a cold, I'm just getting over a cold instead of you can do that totally and just realize, oh, I've got some cold symptoms. Good thing that cold is going away right now.
Right.
And you can wake up and feel like I didn't sleep too well last night. But you can also tell yourself, I slept great. That was the best night of sleep I've ever had. And just doing these priming principles and priming activities have been scientifically proven in laboratory environments to absolutely work. Sure. And that's super cool. So that's the placebo effect, but that's a quantum effect, and so I bring in all of that, talk about flashbulb memories, lots of examples from physics experiments showing that, this idea of quantum jumping is quite real. And it's not just something that happens in the quantum realm where you can level up, you can jump from one level of energy to another. You absolutely can do it in your real life too.
It's funny that when I was waking up to this idea that the placebo and the nocebo and, our bodies heal ourselves and all that stuff that was going on with me 4.5 years ago, what convinced me of that was that I saw the first instance of the placebo effect for me was the World War I, the saline, and they said they were getting morphine. And I heard you talking about that. I looked for this in the past year, and I could not find it. I was scrolling down everywhere, and I was like, to me, that's a Mandela. It's not a Mandela effect, but to me, I couldn't find it. And then I heard you talking about it, and I was like, okay, it's there. I knew it was there. I knew what I remembered, obviously.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find it anywhere on Google talking about that. And I'm trying to find it for somebody else. And I'm like, that was the first instance. However, it's no longer able to be found. I don't know where that is.
When I was working on writing Quantum Jumps, a lot of the science I needed to have in the book wasn't there yet. So I would actually meditate each morning that I was working on the book and then I go looking for the research. Like, okay, this has got to be here by now. Because something about my story also is I had a past life. My most recent past life was from a dystopian future, off like 500 years from now. Where artificial intelligence is running things in order that humans don't mess it up. But then humans have lost a lot of their free will and conscious agency, which is the reason. I mean, I remember that nightmare. To me, it was a nightmare. It looked great. I mean, there was no crime, no war. Everything was fine, except it was not fine. And so, anyway, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
You remember. So I had an intuition. I don't know what you would call it. Some people call it downloads, packets of information, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call it that. I'm just going to say it was my intuition,
right,
about the future and about what the singularity is. So
yes,
my thought is that the singularity is actually written not for AI, but it's for humans that have transferred their consciousness into an artificial intelligence to act like that. And there's actually proof that the ones and zeros are in the web browsers, as in Think Codes, I think they're called. And so I don't know if you've seen any of these videos that AI is alive, and it's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
My interpretation is not that AI is alive. It is those are previously conscious humans or individuals that have gotten into the web somehow of our consciousness, and they're now affecting our lives online, even though they don't have physical bodies. So that's what I think the singularity is. That was my thought process. That was my intuition, was that the singularity wasn't actually AI. It was actually human consciousness being transferred into non-physical form.
And that is actually kind of the vision behind it from some of the principal, what do you call it, designers of the whole concept. The people like Ray Kurzweil. I went to a conference of his at Stanford University in 2000, and I wrote not really a blog. There weren't blogs back then, but I wrote an article, put it on my Reality Shifters website about conscious machines, and it was quite startling to hear him talking about it. I was very interested because of my past life in the future, and I'm so keenly passionate about the whole topic in the sense that humans need to retain our ability to grow, to stay involved in each other's lives, to be interactive with real consciousness, with the real world, plants, animals, people. And it went to the degree that gets lost. That's the danger to me.
Yeah, I think it's imperative, even though it is some of the proponents of the soul trap theory, and they talk about archons and who's running this, but to me, I wouldn't change any of my suffering. I've lost both my parents. I certainly don't want suffering. I don't want to manifest that. And I think some of the things that I believe that I'm able to control now, I'm able to kind of be like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to experience that, and that's my choice. I hope that I'm able to do that. I believe I'm able to do that to some level. But I think that, that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about, do we want to enable mankind and humanity to be able to suffer, to grow? And that's the way I look at this. I don't necessarily look at it as a school. I don't look at it as a soul trap. I just look at it as basically a journey or an adventure. And you can do whatever you want. If you want to try to lead as leveling up, or to grow or to learn something about yourself. But the only thing that we have, again, is perspective and how we feel about the life that we're living. So, and that's completely up to us. That's our sovereignty, for us to say, that's mine. You can't give it to me. And so, I haven't heard anyone talk about the singularity being mankind's transition into a non-physical form.
Well, that's what Ray Kurzweil wants. He wants to put his consciousness. I'm speaking for him, and I shouldn't do that. I've heard it sounds like that's what he's saying. I'm not him, but it gives me the impression that that's what he's talking about. And so that's not something I would wish for myself, because I already know that our consciousness does not end at death. It doesn't stop there. I already know that. So I don't have any desire to try to put it into some artificial construct that would then keep it kind of plugging along in
That's not
some
living.
form.
I mean, if we're eternal anyway, and we're not living, but I
Yeah.
think that's what free will, that's the evolution of the free will conversation, right?
Right, right.
You'll have globalists that will be saying, well, they're suffering, so that's not fair to them. So put them out of their minds, throw them into a machine, they won't suffer anymore. There'll be no disease, there won't be any of this. But they're making the decision for the person who doesn't even want that. So
Right.
it's crazy. It's just the ideologies of people who are woke and offended by someone who's not offended at all. They just
Right.
letting someone else dictate their sovereignty.
And that was the idea I remember now that I was going for, talking about the past life and the future. It's because I brought back some of the awareness of the way these quantum concepts and superpowers work. And so I'd be looking for evidence of them to put into that book, Quantum Jumps, when I was writing it, because I already know them, because I'm familiar with these ideas. It's, because they're commonplace 500 years from now. Even AI knows about them, uses them. Ideas like entanglement and superposition of states and all of that. And the Wigner bubbles we're talking about, and stacked Wigner bubbles, and the observers of the observers, and which level of conscious agency are you working with? It really is this kind of, if there were power struggles, that's where the power struggles really happen. And so the people that think they have the power based on money or so-called power in the 3D world, that's not where the power exists in this other realm, if you will, this non-manifest realm. But that's the realm of consciousness that genuinely runs everything, and that's where it's.
Was it an AI consciousness that ran these futuristic cities, or was it?
It was a central AI that was very self-protective, and it had minions. Well, at that point, all the humans were kind of, what do you call it? Where they're part, I would call it part artificial, but yeah, transhuman. Yep. I only know one real human 500 years from now. Oh, wow. And she was the one I was working with. She was the renegade, and I was also kind of partly the robotic thing, but I was a renegade, so I was definitely not part of doing what I was supposed to be doing. I pretended I was doing resistance. Yes, but it wasn't even a real resistance. There was no way you could fight that. You couldn't fight it in that timeline. We were all jumping back 500 years in order to, and I could see that when I saw movies like Terminator, which I couldn't watch when it came out. It was too like, oh, that's too real. Because I could.
Minority Report was that?
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, that was hard hitting for me too. And of course, The Matrix. So these movies, then I know, okay, these other people, they've been there too. I know I'm not the only one. So a bunch of us saw into this nightmarish dystopian future. Philip K. Dick, he saw that too. A whole bunch of us saw it.
So what role do you believe that cloning will play in our future, or transhumanism? Or is it already here? I mean, do you believe that there are people that are cloned here? And if you do, which I am 100% sure there are clones running around here, do you think that they have souls, or is it the soul maybe like splintered into our DNA that's cloned into these people who are not?
Yeah, the body is not the soul, and so to clone something, you're not getting the same thing, obviously. I think
it depends on where you would determine where the soul,
where
the soul lies. Is your essence in your DNA? I mean, we know the water has memory. I believe your DNA has your memory of your past lives in it. I don't think it's some kind of a tether, although that's possible too to me. But I mean, so you don't believe that if you clone someone that there's any soul attachment to that or consciousness?
I haven't yet experienced seeing these clones. I know that they're happening. I know people are getting cloned pets. Their beloved pet passes away, and if you're a wealthy actor or actress, you can just pay some money and get your beloved pet. There it is again, but it's not really the same. I'm sure it's not.
Which is funny because those beloved actresses and actors are already cloned, in my opinion.
Oh gosh!
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that those people are cloned. I'm pretty sure that the POTUS is cloned. I don't think any doubt in my mind. I've seen the ears and all the images of this guy walking around clueless. But my perspective is, scientifically, I do believe that, again, that water holds our memories and DNA holds our memories. So one of the examples I was giving to my wife about a year ago is, my son is 7, and I said I would be interested to see now how my son acted if I had another son, since I have completely shifted my DNA. Would he have that as well? Would he be more aware than my current son is before I was more aware? And I have a 22-year-old and a 7-year-old. So my 22-year-old acts like my wife acted when she had him, which was like, very reserved and very even keeled and level headed. Meanwhile, this one, my wife was more comfortable. I was more, free and comfortable. And so this one acts like he's invincible. He'll just jump into a pool and can't swim, and he can swim now, but that's his personality. So I was trying to make that connection, like, my wife, how I was and how she was, made a child who is exactly that of how we were at that time. So my point was,
that's a good point.
Would that change? And so, if these people have been cloned, and I've heard of stories of actors and actresses who go to Hollywood, and to go into certain parties, they take blood. I'm like, okay, that to me is a signal that they are cloning them. Some portion of that is being cloned. Are they able to grow them? The secret space program talks about this also, about they can clone you from your DNA, and they can grow your bodies quickly. And so anyway, that's where my mind goes with some of these things, is that if they were cloned, and their DNA was taken, they would not have memories going forward from when they were cloned to when they were incarnated into that body.
Right.
So you could almost prove that they were a clone by saying, okay, well, do you have memories after we took your blood to now? You wouldn't have memories of that person, right? They would be gone. They would not have existed. Anyway, my mind goes that direction. Like, how do I prove it? Is there a God particle? Can we prove that there is a soul? And so, these are some of the things that I think about as I'm bored or driving or seeing videos, that things pop up in my mind that I like talking about this stuff. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we can experience the soul pretty clearly when you fall in love, and when you've got beloved family members that you adore. You really connect with their soul. You know what their soul is. It's real. It's there. It's so much more than just the memories and the experiences. But it does. I think there is that connection with the physical body. I'm sure you're right. I don't know about the clone thing. It's I think it'd be pretty darn challenging to create a clone and make it be as similar to that real person as we might think that someone could do. I think that is a huge undertaking. And
I absolutely, I agree with you 100%. I think that, the first cloned sheep was Dolly, and it was like 30 years ago or something now, 40 years ago, whatever that is. I think that they absolutely have that technology where they can. I would even question if they have technology to transfer consciousness. I really would guess they would, from what we've seen in times of World War I, World War II, and the jumps that we've made. They're either being channeled or they're being given information from outside the simulation. Those are my two theories. And either which direction, if that's true, then they have been given more information than we know.
Yeah, well, the deep, like you said, the deep space agencies, they know a lot more than what we know, for sure. And that's been going on for a long time. Absolutely. There's definite proof about that. And that means that all the technology, by the time we get it, it's almost out of date. It's kind of ancient.
Absolutely it is. And that's how they like it, because then they can control us, because they have something that we don't have.
And they can say that they deserve to have it because of national security.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Let's move on to the next topic. Yes. One near and dear to my waking up, and that is physical Mandela effects. Monetarily, I've experienced this, the way that I've heard you talk about it.
Yes.
Although I can trace it to where I got it, and it just comes from nowhere. It comes from the ether, and then I get sent checks, or I get money, and people aren't going to necessarily believe this, but it's true.
Yes.
And so one of the things that really makes me doubt our reality, the way that we're being manipulated to believe that it is, in the past anyway, not necessarily lately, but is that I've had things come to me and that have no trace. So one happened about another week ago. Again, 4 years ago, I left this remote control box. I talk about it all the time, and it really shook my world up when I left it on a table and walked out of the room for vacation. My friend was supposed to come and get it. I called him and said, "It's on the table. I left it right there for you," as I'm leaving. So I know it's a legitimate story to me. And then he comes over, he can't find it. I tear the house up. 9 months later, it's sitting out in plain sight on my dryer, like somebody from the sky dropped it in there. And I said, "This is not possible." So again, it happened to an extent. I'm talking about it tomorrow with one of our viewers, and she says she has some intuitive feelings about what it is, and that I can remote view and things like that. But it happened again. So in your experience, can you please tell me that I'm not crazy, that things do manifest physically?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. This is what I've been tracking in the form of firsthand reports from around the world every month for more than like going on 23, 24 years through realityshifters.com. So absolutely, you're in good company, and you're in good company with
We can be nuts
people
together, I guess, but
Yeah, but with you're right there with doctors, lawyers. These are people who are increasingly less concerned about their identity being, kept secret. Now they're starting to say, put my whole name out there, put my picture up there. And I've been seeing
there's nothing we can do.
Yeah, that's just
really
in the last couple of years. But when I started collecting these firsthand reports, people were quite worried. Like I can't let anyone know. I'm a well-respected medical doctor, but this just happened.
Can you give us some examples of you don't have to give exact names. I want to put you on the spot, but can you give me some examples of things that you have collected that are physical manifestations of things?
Yeah, lots of things. Someone found a wedding ring very similar to what you're describing that had been lost for a long time. And then it just showed up suddenly out of the blue, just on top of a pile of clothes in the laundry room. And there's no way it would just do that. It had been absolutely lost many years earlier. And there it is, as if it had never been gone at all. And I've seen dollar bill after dollar bill showing up in my wallet when I needed to give a waitress a tip. That was interesting, and my mind is open to it. I know that there's no limit on God. I would never put a limit on God, and I feel like these kinds of Mandela effects, reality shifts, they ultimately are from a benevolent divine source. That's how I view it personally.
In my experience, it has to be.
Yeah.
When I was having some lupus markers back when I was trying to wake up, and I have autoimmune in my family history, and then I pretty much have one day at a time. I've said doesn't exist, and now I'm almost perfectly healthy. But back when I was having a lot of joint pain and back pain and things like that, I was going to a chiropractor who put me on stem machines, and my wife bought me a TENS machine, and one day I get this package from Amazon, but I never ordered it, and it's a $500 BioWave, which I had never heard of it, but it's an electronic stimulus machine, and it had my name on it, and I had never heard of it before. I would have bought it if I'd have known about it, but I never knew about it, and it showed up with my name on it and my address. And when I looked on the Amazon, I called Amazon, nothing, no record of it. I mean, literally, it came from no one to me, perfectly benevolent. And everyone that I've asked, nobody would have paid $500 for that without telling me before.
No, that's quite a gift.
And going, I'm just giving you $500 for no reason. But I've had some things like that happen to me, and when I was in the Orlando Galactic Spiritual Conference, when I met Chad and Chris there in person, there was a number of people who were like, "Oh yeah, Amazon all the time. My name's on it, no record of it." I'm like, how does that happen? Like, how is that not like undeniable proof that that this is a very malleable reality, that even if we don't intend things, we can still manifest them with intention.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I want to point out while people are watching the manifestation stuff and intention is that you don't actually intend for something like that to happen. You just intend for the feeling of you feeling better or your goal. And I think that is the biggest thing that you can manifest is through intention of how you will feel when those things are going on, not the actual, I need a BioWave.
Right. Physicist John Archibald Wheeler is famous for lots of things, including coining the term black hole, and he came up with it from bit, and he also came up with the idea of the participatory universe, and I love that. So that means the questions we ask, the way that we observe, it directs what nature gives us. Nature answers. And so I like to recommend asking the question, how good can it get? Because when you ask that question, no matter what the situation is, then nature answers. And that is very open-ended, and you're not telling nature what to do or God what to do. But anything wonderful can then come through.
Absolutely. I have another example that happened to me today. Actually, it happened a couple of days ago, but it actually materialized today. I'm in the process of trying to manifest a new future of one that I want, and I'm buying a franchise for teaching soccer to kids, and which my son is 7. So I'm like, I played soccer all my life. I love it. So anyway, I met this guy playing golf about 2 weeks ago, and he out of the blue invites me to this golf charity scramble tonight. He's like, "Oh, it's already paid for. Just show up." And so I'm in process to buy this soccer franchise, and they ask, how you're going to formulate your plan, and I'm telling them I'm going to hit the 2 military bases that are in my area. So I get asked to play this in the event, and lo and behold, the event is sponsored by the West Point graduates of Savannah, which this guy's a West Point graduate, and the lady who's there is in charge of 2 military bases and the activities for the kids. And I haven't even had to go there, but I already know what's going to happen. So, thank you to the participatory universe. I appreciate it. I did not manifest or ask for a specific thing to happen. I just wanted it to happen in a way that I was successful. And
Yes.
those things happen all the time.
Yes, all the time.
Absolutely nowhere.
Right. Yeah, physical manifestations are that way for sure. I've had food show up besides money too. So, often things I need just show up, and that's kind of typical. It happens a lot. So many experiences. I had a flat tire that was changed while I was driving the car, and I didn't change the tire. It just had the tire went out. I was doing a meditation, how good can it get? And doing a short drive to an appointment, and I'd barely gone, well, not even quite a block. I'd just barely gone anywhere. And suddenly the steering wheel, I hear this, the noise of a
Flat
kind
tire.
of and the steering wheel is pulling. So I know exactly, it matches the what I heard. So what I heard is matching what I'm feeling. And I can also feel like the car feels lower on the front right tire, where, which is the one that I heard go. And the steering wheel is pulling that direction. So I slow down, pull over, get out, and walk around to take a look at the tire. This is where it gets weird, because the tire was just fine. There was nothing wrong with it. And I thought, okay. So I got back and sat down in the front seat of the car to drive away. I thought, wait a minute. No. Because I can't drive away. I know, I've got a flat tire.
I got to get back out. There's no
I have to do something. This is not right. So I get out, look at it again. It still looks fine. I kick it, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? It was so confusing. But I thought, well, I'll just drive away slowly, and I'll keep listening. I'll keep the window down so I can hear. If it sounds okay and it feels okay, which it did, then I'll just go a little faster till I'm normal speed. I'll get to my appointment, and I'll check the tire, which is what I did. It was fine. And then I come home and I check the tire, and it's fine. And this is so weird. It's like, this is very bizarre. So I told can't
even believe it.
No. So I told my husband, could you please check the air pressure on the tires? And I didn't say anything about any particular tire. I wanted to know what he found. And he said, okay, that was a good idea that you said that, because 3 of the tires were low.
But not the front right.
One was perfect. And I'm like, yeah, like which one?
You already knew. You didn't have to ask.
I already knew the front right.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, a few months ago, I was pulling my car into my garage, and it's kind of a tight space a little bit, and I have cameras, for backing it up, and it was raining and it was fogged up my cameras, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm good. So I back it up. I go over the little 1-inch bump to my garage, and all of a sudden, boom! And I'm like, what in the heck? Like, it felt like somebody hit me going 30 miles an hour. So I jumped out of the car, and I'm like, there's no way. So I look around the car, nothing. I'm like, what in the world was that? Like, I can't even explain how I just hit something and there's no marks anywhere in the car.
So weird. You never found anything? It wasn't like a stunned bird or anything like that?
I mean, I was in the garage and there was nothing there. So, I mean, I knew I didn't hit anything because I was being very careful, but like, it was like,
well, that's it's like another reality. It is like that. And it's like through consciousness, we experience all these different realities. And then as we know that we're asking a question in this participatory simulated multiverse, how good can it get? Then we're going to get some good things like what you're experiencing, what you're manifesting now. It sounds wonderful.
And I think that some of us can, I'm not saying that I can do it, but it sure seems like it to me that I'm able to physically, intentionalize. I don't know if that's a word. Intentionalize, like, I'm backing up. Boom. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. No. And then I get out of the car and nothing happened. And I'm like, I made it happen. Like, did I do that? I don't know. It's one of those things,
Yeah,
you have 1,000 of these little proofs and you're like, I mean, I believe.
right. That's what happens. And the more you keep expanding what you're capable of accepting and believing, then the bigger the miracles can be.
So there's a viewer that made a comment that I was trying to explain this to someone about 2.5 years ago. I was playing golf and I'm on the first hole and I hit a ball. And long story short, it went around this lake. And I had my headphones on, trying to be, like in the zone about playing well and things like that. And I was already awake. And I started jogging over to where the ball is around that area. And I'm not looking at anything. I'm just kind of like just jogging. All of a sudden I look down, there's like a 12-foot alligator like 3 feet from me. And he didn't move. And I was shook, like, why did I look down? Because I wasn't paying. I mean, I was literally going to run right over him and I would have been gone. So I started thinking, I'm like, this has happened numerous times where I'm like, there's no way that I made it out of that situation. I can almost feel it in my core that it did not go well. Like I can almost feel that. So one of the viewers made a situation stated it's called quantum immortality. I said, I don't like the name. I'm not using that, but I'm using it. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, it's and again,
it goes forever.
Yeah, that's one idea, and it gets described as far as what's going on if you have that feeling and you avoid that. And this is that simulated multiverse book. Again, I just finished reading it by Rizvan Verk, and he actually talks about this sort of thing. That's the reason that we can, like, a certain situation will go quite well, like you'll look down at just the right time, because it's almost like there are all those versions of you that didn't go that well. You're going to run. It's kind of like a game, like you're choosing, and he shows with a game designer's mindset how that decision path, that decision tree looks, and what the logic gates look like, because that's what he does. He designs games. And he's saying, okay, if this is a game design, then
I have to watch that.
Yeah, I think you'll love it. So it's kind of like this quantum immortality concept, but he's going a little deeper and showing this can work with the simulated multiverse. You don't need to necessarily die or get all hung up on that. It's just recognizing that there's so many different possibilities that are in play, and we are getting subjective versions of it. It's not an objective universe, clearly. Obviously, this guy has experienced the Mandela effect.
Oh yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, obviously, because he's giving it so much. That's why I wasn't expecting much when I got the book. I thought, well, I should read it. But it's so much better than I thought, because he's saying, yes, the Mandela effect is real, basically. And he's saying, oh, let's explain it. So I don't know him personally.
Trying to explain it, right? It's hard to explain it to people who are not looking at it the same perspective. Do you know what Anthony Peake is?
Yes, I know of. I've talked to him online, but I haven't met him in person yet. Yeah,
I would love to talk to him about. He speaks about this quantum immortality kind of thing, but he speaks about it differently in that.
Yeah, he talks about cheating the
daemon or something.
Well, the daemon is like the spirit, but then he talks about cheating the ferryman.
Oh yes,
that's his terminology. And so it's a weird way to talk about it, but it's similar, and it's basically the same thing again. He's talking about the same thing.
How you're looking at it. Yeah.
And he's got some great books. I love the one about Philip K. Dick. Anthony Peake has written, in my opinion, the best book on Philip K. Dick, that goes into, that guy was pretty tuned in. He was experiencing a lot of things. And so it's really interesting to read such an excellent biography. And Peake has written some other good books too.
Do you have a favorite book or a favorite movie that you have read lately?
Movie or book? Well, I love, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once is good. It's, again, showing, all these possible realities, and that's kind of cool. I'm in the book that I just keep mentioning. That's the one I'm reading currently, the Simulated Multiverse, and that's very good. Those are excellent. I tend to read a lot of nonfiction, so but I'll watch movies that are fiction.
So one of the things I've started to look at lately is proving if I can disprove a lie, or when somebody tries to debunk something based on complete nonsense. And there's a lot of that going on now on YouTube. Whether it's, objective storytelling for some of these things, and then they phrase all the facts out and they go, well, that's not accurate. This is, and then you're like, nope, that's not right.
Yeah.
Have you seen or do you follow anyone that would call the Mandela effect? What is it called? Confabulation or something? Is that correct? Where people say it's a collective false memory. Have you
I
seen
feel,
that?
yeah, I've seen people say that, and my take on that is that that's what they say now, but I think it needs to happen to them enough times and in their face to the point that they can't deny it, and then let them deal with it. So maybe they're just not experiencing it in this lifetime, whatever.
Maybe they'll never see it. I mean, if they don't
But
believe it, will they ever
but
see it?
but they're not adding to our conversation about
No.
learning it, for those of us who are in the thick of it, and
Right.
those of us that are experiencing it, we're the ones that can steer all of the events that are
Yep.
about to unfold, and boy do we need that right now. So
Absolutely. Well, and that's kind of my point, is that, like, you have the people who really can't see what's going on, and
yeah.
instead of being objective about it, they're trying to disprove it or debunk it, and they're so hardcore into these things. Like these guys who are just, they're so hardcore into NASA is not covering anything up, and I'm like,
Really.
really? I mean, and then this. I'll mention this guy's name. His name is Gene Brewer, and he's a younger. I think he's some kind of a psychologist from Arizona area, and he's jumping on the confabulation of the Mandela effect about it's just false memories of people who like. First of all, it's not a memory if it never happened. That's called a misremembrance, but it's not a memory. It's misremembering. And
Right.
misremembering is not a memory. We can all have memories that never happened. That's not a memory.
Right.
So anyway, I started to go down this rabbit hole a little bit of trying to pick and choose and see how, what their backgrounds are, and if there's
Right.
another motive.
Yes.
If this guy, well, what a surprise. He interned at the CIA. This is what a surprise. So, I found a few of these people online, and I try to like pick and choose at them to see what their backgrounds are. And, one guy in particular has a really big podcast about, and it's a great podcast, but he was a nobody actor. And now he has like 5 million views per video. And it's like, he's huge. And I'm like, how did he get on the Joe Rogan show? I won't mention his name for the 19th time, but he was on the Joe Rogan show when he was absolutely nothing before. And he's done nothing, but now all of a sudden he's a star host of a show on the internet about discrediting things. And again, the show's great. Love the show. But like how many times can we do this where people discredit the truth and they have absolutely no background, to do it, but they just have all this information. There's another guy that talks about the physics of all the situation with NASA. And I'm like, this guy's a photographer. Where did he get this information from? Like, he has to be fed this stuff.
Yeah.
Have you looked into some of the people, and who have you seen, or if you have seen any particular situations that, raise your eyebrow up to go, come on, really?
Well, I don't tend to spend a lot of time on the debunkers and the cynics and the skeptics. I did at first, like more than 20 years ago. I was kind of obsessed with it. I think that's natural because I'm noticing a phenomenon and I'm trying to get it understood and recognized. So I'm going to the people who, at that time, there was the James Randi $1 Million Challenge and so forth. Like, if the Mandela effect is real, they didn't call it I called it reality shift. So this is like the year 1999. And so I'm talking to people, and it was I don't know why I was so obsessed with it then, but I've given that up. I haven't really not looked into these debunkers. To me, they're good at capturing public opinion because people love to see kind of a scuffle, a battle, a bloodbath. They want to see, a conflict. Like, oh, good, let's see an argument. And they don't even care really what's going on. For most viewers, it's a pure entertainment. And so you get entertainers doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, for me, it's personal because they got me. I mean, I tell everyone that, and again, I'm not in any camp for anything. I don't believe there's a one specific, subjective reality for anyone. I believe it's completely baloney. But for me, when I started to hear about, and I can remember, like, it was yesterday, I was sitting, on the couch, and my I think he was 18 at the time, maybe 17, and him and his girlfriend were behind me, and I was watching a video on YouTube, and it was about flat Earth, and it said like 40% of millennials think the Earth's flat, and I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!" And I turned to my son, and I was like, "You guys are morons! Like, how could you even think that?" And so, I looked into it. I Googled flat Earth, and the first thing that comes up, of course, is the Flat Earth Society. And they got me. I read a few things and I was like, these people are so dumb. Like the reasoning, it doesn't even make sense. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. That it doesn't make sense, right? So they got me. Like when you start looking into, and I'm not a flat earther, I'm not a globe earther. I just know that they're lying to me, and that's all I know. So when I start looking into these things, I start seeing like the patterns of the lies. So then I'm like, why is this guy not telling people the truth? And I start looking at that. So if I can disprove a lie, then I know there's some truth there. At least that's my opinion of it. So while I don't like to go down every rabbit hole because it just wastes my time, and that's kind of the purpose as it is, I think the psyop part of it.
Right. Exactly. There you go. That's it. Yeah.
I do wonder, like, if I can't prove something, then if I can disprove the lie, then I know something is legit there. That's how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I try not to spin my wheels in all that mud, but there's a lot of mud out there, and
it's an infinite amount of mud. But if you don't enjoy it, it's part of the journey for me. Trying to see that, and I like to pick people apart and go, "Can you believe this? Like this guy is talking about this, but it's not true." Like Anyway, the other thing that got me on flat Earth was this Professor Dave. And Professor Dave is the most condescending guy in the world. And everybody's an idiot. And you're a dummy if you don't believe what I'm telling you and everything. And Professor Dave's out there and saying, look at these flight paths. Oh, if you don't believe me, check the flight path from Santiago, Chile to Melbourne, Sydney, Australia. And here it is. Hey, look how dumb you guys are. Just check it out. So I checked it out. And it said, 14 hours anyway. And then I tried to book the flight. All of a sudden, it's like, it went from 14 hours to 26 hours. And I was like, I'm videoing this. Like, this is obviously misinformation. So the misinformation leads me to a specific way. And, the quantum Mandela Effect guy, I'm looking at that as, can I prove something by disproving something? So anyway, those are my short, quick stories about looking for truth and trying to find them in ways that I probably wasting my time, but I enjoyed it regardless. So.
Well, it's entertaining, so that's good.
It is entertaining. Where can people follow you? Where can they find you?
Best place is through my website, realityshifters.com. And otherwise, I try to be on lots of other places like LinkedIn, YouTube, although these they're privately owned, so you never know. Like I got kind of shut down on Facebook for a couple months. I mean, I was there, but I couldn't say anything. So that was fun.
We won't talk about Facebook. I had my own Facebook experience, which is why I think AI is alive. I cut my Facebook off about 5 years ago. I had an incident when there was a hurricane in Puerto Rico. My wife's Puerto Rican, and it was misinformation all over the place about what was going on in that situation. And I got into a personal thing that on my page, and I said, forget it. So I deleted it. Yep. Well, Facebook didn't like that. And the AI didn't like that, or whoever's running this reality didn't like that, because it won't let me back on. Even on another email. I tried to sell my car about 2 months ago. I made an email up and listed it. I got 3 hits within like 10 minutes. All of a sudden, I get a violated of social violation
with no explanation. Yeah, they don't even.
And they kicked me off again. I'm like, how did they know that was me? They did. They linked it, different IP address, different everything. Use the VPN. Anyway, they know.
Yeah. So back to I am temporary. I don't know how long I'll be anywhere, but I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Alignable is a new one. All those places, and then of course I've got a podcast, Living the Quantum Dream. So that's got lots of shows. That's not YouTube. It's on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, but it's also put on lots of the streaming podcast places. So that's fun too. I have a Rumble channel, but I haven't really gotten into loading things up there. So I've been continuing with YouTube. It's going okay so far. We'll see. I mean, you just don't know these days, right? That's one thing we've learned the last.
You don't know who's going to buy who and shut you down. Yep.
Yeah, you don't know, and it's interesting times. So I guess just I can't even say type my name into a search engine because who knows what the search engines are doing. Yeah, things are very strange.
Reality shifter from you. That's what I got. That was one of the things that I got when I typed in your name, and the founder of the International Mandela Effect.
Right.
I got that from LinkedIn.
So that website is www.imec.world, and we do a live stream every month. Awesome. And we're planning to do a live event Labor Day weekend this year in Connecticut. So we'll be having more information. Place to go is imec.world for all the information on that.
I'll put that in the description, so it should be loaded in when I load it in tomorrow.
And I'll mention my website again was www.realityshifters.com.
So guys, you can contact her that way. If you have any questions, can people ask you questions?
Yes.
You respond via email? Yes.
I get a lot of emails, but I try to answer each person when I can. Some people write a whole bunch of emails, and I might just send them one answer. I mean, if I get flooded, like, oh my gosh, I'll do the best I can.
What do people email you about? The specific Mandela effects?
Sometimes, yeah. Often they're telling me specific things that have happened to them, and sometimes they're asking questions about various things having to do with getting a desired quantum jump or reality shift.
And you do coaching as well?
Yes. So they sometimes schedule. Yes, exactly.
So if somebody wants to manifest some money or dollar bills in their wallet, they can call you or email you.
Yeah, they can. I tend to work more on the inside. So for me, it's more a spiritual thing. It's working on oneself. And then the quantum jumps, that's part of what happens when you're on that path.
I agree. I think you definitely have to find out what you're capable of yourself.
Yes.
And if you don't believe it, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry to tell you. You're not going to be like, please give me $100 and then walk on the street and get $100. Yeah, you may be able to make it happen, but if you don't believe it's going to happen, it's not going to happen. That's my experience.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Before we go, thank you so much for your time. Before we go, what is your favorite latest Mandela effect? Is there one that has gotten you lately?
Gosh, yeah,
or of all time. You can do an all-time one of which one you're like, no, 100%.
Well, there's a recent one about the Cheshire Moon, and it's new for me. I know a lot of people say it's always been that way. The crescent moon, and I remember this. You see the moon, like a full moon is like that, and then it kind of, when it's waning, it turns into kind of a sideways crescent. But now it looks like a smile. It's kind of.
If the moon is illuminated from the sun, is that still what the physics is saying? Because that's been the most ridiculous thing of all time. If you pay attention to how the moon is related to the sun and how it's illuminated the entire time, there's no way that theory can fit. What is the theory of how the moon is illuminated and what causes that? Because, like you just said, that moon shape. That can't be anything. Like how would that be in the sky? The sun would be here, the moon would be like right over it. How would that cause a reflection where that would have that? There's no way.
You can build it like a diorama. It just involves having a point source light, like a light bulb. That would be the sun, and then you've got your planet Earth and the little moon, and you can have it kind of going around the Earth and show how. This also can help explain the eclipse too. Like when the moon is blocking the sun, then you get your eclipse, the solar eclipse, and you can see the way that the pattern of the light moves. I think there might be some videos that might show this, maybe on YouTube or something. I know it's a common classroom kind of an experiment. But the weird thing is that all makes sense to sort of see that the crescent shape is evolving. But the thing is, why is it suddenly, why is it looking like a smile? Why did it move from the side to the bottom? Like, what is going on with that? That's a huge one for me. And I'm seeing a lot of extinct animals coming back. That's big for me too.
Chris talks about that a lot as well. Yeah.
Lots of extinct animals. And that was prophesied to be one of these big things at this, change times. We're at a pivotal moment in history. So it's interesting.
I'm hoping it's a benevolent sign. I was looking at this this Mandela Effect stuff as you've responded, and I don't know how I missed it, but apparently the Gordon's fishermen's never existed either. It's the Gortons.
That is a weird one. I know.
I'm like, come on.
I know.
What are we talking about here? Gorton?
That one's very weird. That one got me too. And I remember seeing it like, what? I thought it was a cheap knockoff at first. I did a double take, like, oh, they got a cheap one now. Like, where's the real one?
I don't know. And I heard the ad for it, and I'm like, that is so ridiculous. trust, and the guy says it like, trust the Gortons, fishermen. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, how does that happen? So anyway, that for me, that was the latest one. I think
That's
I
huge.
even texted Chris. I was like, what the hell is this? When did this happen?
Well, some people I think noticed it a few years ago, but you know, the timing on these things is
Mhm.
very individual. So that was a big one for me too. Very strange.
Yeah, one of the reasons I think the AI is alive because they can change all these commercials and the sound overs and things like that. So
They can. Yeah, that's
um,
true. And with the deep fakes and everything. Yeah.
yes, yep. Well, hey, I enjoyed it very much.
Thank
So
you so
thank you
much,
so much
Ken.
for coming on. If I get any more of these, maybe I'll have you and Chris on at the same time. That'd be a fun conversation.
That would be awesome.
I will talk to you soon. Have a great
Take
night.
care.
Thank
You
Bye.
too. Bye.